To be honest with you, I have skipped teaching or preaching this psalm before publicly because it's so short and because of its length. It's one of the shortest chapters in the Bible, only 3 verses. And I don't know why that would stop me, right? Because I spent a lot more time on passages that were shorter. On Sunday mornings, we've been doing the 10 Commandments, and sometimes that's really focused on just one verse in Exodus chapter 20. And then in Sunday school, often we'll just do 2 verses, and it'll take 45 minutes. And so there's plenty of information here. And because of its length, it's easy to skip over. It's easy to miss. If you just read through your Bible in a year, this is probably one of several chapters you read on that day. And so it's real easy to just kind of go through and overlook and not really concentrate on it. And some might consider it insignificant or easy to miss because of its length. But dynamite comes in small packages, and that's what you're going to see this evening. I'm approaching this tonight because I knew we'd be limited on time, among other things, because of the children's program. But now that I've thoroughly studied this and looked at it and meditated on it and thought about it, it's been a blessing to me this week. I hope it'll be a blessing to you as well. And we might not even really have time to give it the attention that it deserves. So I hope that you will not just listen to the message tonight, but you'll take it home and you'll ponder it and you'll meditate on it and think about it and how it applies to your personal life. Psalms 103, verse 1 through 3. All right, Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor my eyes lofty, neither do I exercise myself in great matters, for in things too high for me. Surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. So just going through this, we may look through it several times, but first reading, when I first read through this, I'm thinking, can you imagine writing something about your own humility? It just doesn't really seem to fit when you look at verse 1 and 2, and he's talking about how humble he is. It reminds me of all those jokes about the guy who wrote the book, Humility, My Greatest Work, or Humility and How I Attained It. Because once you announce that you have humility, it seems like you've just lost it, right? And it seems like it's gone. And Chuck Swindoll said this, and I thought it was beautifully worded. Humility is the fairest and rarest of all flowers that bloom. You put it on display, and it'll instantly wilt and lose its fragrance. And it makes a lot of sense. So first reading, I'm thinking, okay, David's writing about his own humility. That's kind of interesting. And how can someone say, oh, my heart is not haughty? Can we really look in the mirror or look into our heart and say, my heart is never lifted up with pride. My eyes aren't lifted up in pride. I'm not exercising myself in things that are too great for me. And I've just quieted myself as a weaned child of his mother. It just doesn't sound like something that a lot of people would admit to or talk about. But the second reading, I read it, and I see that he uses personal pronouns 8 times. And so that kind of caught me off guard as well, because it's a psalm about humility. And I see the word my, mine, I, me, I, myself, my. Now that, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like a lot of humility there. And how is that conducive with humility? And to the choir director, you know, David's written this psalm. Oh, I've got another psalm. He hands it to the choir director. And, hey, I just wrote this song about humility. It's really good. I'd like for everyone to sing it on Sunday morning. I think it's going to be a blessing to all those that hear it, and it'll be really great. And but realize that David probably didn't realize that this psalm was going to be put on public display for everyone to hear and read and see. For Hezekiah is the one that gathered it together and said, we're going to use this in the services. So this was kind of a private collection of David as one of his private prayers to the Lord. And I think of it as a private communication between a man and his God. And I'll just be honest with you. There are a lot of my prayers that I really don't want anyone to hear. They're private. It's between me and the Lord. And there's a lot of things that I might share with the Lord that I really don't want anyone else to hear, and I really don't want anyone else to know about. I think most of us would feel that way about it, a lot of the things that we bring before God. So you notice in the very first verse number 1, the first thing that said is, oh Lord. He's talking to the Lord. He's not talking to us. This is private. And so it helps me to understand the meaning of it. We really know nothing of the occasion of this psalm, when or why it was written. And we can only guess as to how old David was when he wrote this psalm. A lot of commentaries do guess about he could have been this age, he could have been this, but we don't really know. We don't know the circumstances. It's a mystery, all right? So, okay, let's speculate. We don't normally do that, but just think about all the different times in his life. Think about right before he's anointed with oil. He's going to be king. He's a boy. He's invited to the palace. He's playing his harp for the king, and all of those moments where he could have. I'm really moving up here. I've got a position of influence, and then he kills Goliath. That could be a great time of pride in his life. And for some reason, the pride is knocked low, and he comes back and says, "Okay, I thought I had pride. All my pride is now gone," because we know that eventually he has to flee for his life. And if you're living out in the wilderness in a cave, that's a pretty good place to find humility and say, all of my pride is gone. All of my pride has left me. And you think even as he got older and he began to do things that he shouldn't have done. We think of David and Goliath. We also think of David and Bathsheba. Ask a kid, what do you know about David? Goliath. You ask an adult, what do you know about David? Oh, Bathsheba. We think about the failure that he had. And so here is David, and he's made a huge mistake. And Nathan confronts him about it. And so it's another moment in his time that we can say, that could be, the pride is just knocked out from under him. And, we've seen a lot more people on the streets lately in Johnson County. I don't know if you've noticed that. We used to never see panhandlers on the street in Johnson County. Now there's quite a few panhandlers. And I saw a man the other day, and I just saw him from a distance. But instead of holding up a sign or looking at the cars that come by, they may want to look at you and make eye contact with you to really make you feel guilty when you drive by. And if this guy his head was just totally bowed behind a sign. And then a little later, I saw him again just driving down. He was on a side road, but I came back by, and he was like bowed on the ground with his face to the ground. And it looked like he had a lot of other problems, and you have all those things that go through your mind. If I was to give this guy money, is it going to go straight to drugs? And, it seems like there could be some other drug problems there, something else. I don't know his story. I have no idea. But it seemed like the pride was gone. I mean, what does it take in our life for the pride to just be ripped away from us? And so we think of all of these things. Maybe it was a point when he had blown it with Bathsheba and the pride was gone. And maybe his pride had been publicly on display and someone challenged him. There's a point where he's slobbering and pretending to be mad before a heathen king. And I mean, that's a point of pretty low humility, right? And so that moment could come after hurt, it could come after pain, it could come after disappointment, it could come after pressure, it could come when he's in obscurity. It could happen when he was completely overwhelmed by the things that were surrounding him. But the question is, when do you struggle with pride? And so if there's a moment in your life you say, well, it could be here, it could be there, that's when this psalm fits. That's when we need to come back to this psalm. It fits in the moments of your life because pride can creep into our life even when we least expect it and we don't want it to be there. And so maybe we look at our life and it's come through on more than one occasion. Pride has come in and pride is there and we have to fight it. Pride versus humility. So back in verse number 1 again, Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor my eyes lofty, neither do I exercise myself in great matters or in things too high for me. There are 3 negatives there in 3 clauses. My heart is not haughty, number 1. My eyes are not lofty, number 2. Number 3, I don't involve myself in things above my head, my pay grade, my knowledge, my expertise. And you ever want to just give your input even when you really don't know what you're talking about? Has that ever happened to you at any point in your life? But notice in verse 1 he mentions his heart first. That is the source of pride. And it comes out of our heart. You say, check my heart, no pride here. And so we're not going to show hands or anything like that tonight, but just be honest when you look inside. Can you say that tonight? Oh, I'm going to do a heart check. No pride here whatsoever. I think very few people can say that. I mean, who can say that? And I've thought maybe normally someone who's been brought really low by something horrible that's happened in their life. One who is not lifted up. And notice what's lifted up and what's not lifted up. He says, my eyes are not lifted up. You can tell a lot about someone by looking them in the eye. And if you look people in the eye, it sometimes has a tendency to make people very nervous when you look them in the eye. And we had someone visiting in our family one time, and one of my kids was talking about I'd been intimidating, and I'm like, I'm not intimidating. Why would you think I'm intimidating? And this person spoke up and said, eye contact, right? I was taught you're supposed to make eye contact when I was growing up. You look someone in the eye, and the only reason you look away is if you have something to be afraid of. But you look some people in the eye, and it just messes with their mind. They don't want you to look them in the eye. They don't want you to make that eye contact. But have you ever looked at someone and you just think, man, that guy's eyes are really lifted up with pride. You can see it in their eyes. And Proverbs 30:13 says there's a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. It's talking about there's pride there, and you can see it in the person's eyes. The proud look. So we're examining the heart, and we say, okay, how is the heart revealed? One of the ways your heart is revealed is through your eyes. It's also revealed through your mouth. What comes out of the heart? Out of the heart, Jesus said, proceeds. And it's also revealed through time. Eventually, people will see what your heart is. And so the heart is kind of like a well, and the eyes and the tongue are like buckets that are drawing from that same well. And David says, my heart and my eyes can stand the test of scrutiny. Go ahead and check it out. No pride here in my heart. No pride in my eyes. I don't need to be heard anymore. I don't need to pursue prominence or greatness. He's okay not to be in the limelight. I don't need to involve myself in things that are above my pay grade, that are too high for me. I'm okay right where I'm at. I'm not lifted up. Verse 2, he says, surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that's weaned of his mother. So the weaning of a child kind of marks a strange stage in the growth of a child. You might think of it as the first steps of independence, but there's really no independence there. The child is growing, but still totally dependent on mom, no position to make any more than the simplest of decisions. No, I don't want to eat my peas, whatever that may be, but you may still force them to do that. But the child is in this picture is weaned, but content. There's no more longing for that milk. He's been weaned from initial complete dependence, still under parental permission and guidance. And David is saying to us, my soul is content. It's calm. It's smooth. He is at peace without attention. David was okay with as much independence as God gave him, yet still willing to know as much insecurity as God wanted him to have. It's an unusual position, but I'm just going to stay close. The child is weaned, but still staying as close as possible to the mom. And David says, I'm going to stay as close as possible to God. And God does want to wean us to some degree, and therein lies our potential and our peril. And so the child is content, no longer striving, no longer fretting for mom, no longer demanding or restless. All is calm. Now, religion, maybe we should say Christianity. We don't always like the word religion, but Christianity, becoming more like Christ, produces self-control and is inconsistent with pride and arrogance and ambitious ambition, the attitude. There's contentment. And so we look at verse 2 and we say, okay, my pride has been brought low, and I am content where I'm at with my lot in life and with what's going on. And that does prepare us for Sunday's message a little bit. Thou shalt not covet. So I'm happy with where I'm at and what I have. And so God is working more than likely in all of us, the majority of us, to wean us from every source of pride in our life. Whether it's public notice, maybe I have a talent that's no longer needed, a job that's no longer applicable. I went to work today and they said they don't need me at McDonald's because they put in this machine that's going to take your order. And I went to the grocery store. I don't need you because they'll just check out themselves. You can go back on home. You've been replaced. And I was replaced by a machine. So there's no longer need there. My counsel is no longer sought. No one's asking me what I think. So all of these things begin to happen, but yet there's still contentment there. And then he comes to verse 3, and there's a change. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. So the question is, where is our hope? Is our hope in our abilities? Is our hope in our cleverness, our initiative, our ingenuity, our strength? It's no longer me. Our hope is totally in the Lord on this day and forevermore. I'm going to trust in the Lord and what he can do. And so I can see this psalm applying to a lot of different moments in David's life. And hopefully you kind of thought of those some as well. Pre-palace, during the palace, out of the palace, back in the palace, ran out of the palace by Absalom, back in the palace, retirement, all of those things. And I can see it applying to a lot of different moments in our life as well. And sometimes if we get to that place and you think about the retirement part of it, you say, I'm no longer needed. My kids don't need me. People don't need me. The work doesn't need me. What is my value? What is my purpose? What is my reason? And if we look back, sometimes all of that we were looking for was we wanted affirmation. We wanted praise. And we're taking a lot of those things that really belong to God and not us. Lord, I need to get me out of the way. John the Baptist said he needs to increase. I need to decrease. And I think it sometimes takes almost a lifetime to make that happen. Because pride is so sneaky, it just comes right back in. Pride versus humility, a constant battle. And we need to see more of him and less of me. So I had the privilege of, for quite a few years, of walking side by side with Pastor Byers, who was here before me. And many of you remember him, and many of you know him. And of all the men I've ever known, he would be the one that I would say was the one that I respected more than any other man I ever knew. And I was close to him, and I knew him, yet still I respected him. And one of the interesting things about Pastor Byers was that I would watch him, and we would go places together. And it didn't matter where we went. We could go to a national meeting. We could go to a state meeting. One of the pastors is here that knew him tonight. We could go to the bank. And he always looked perfect. He always had a suit on. When I came, he's like, you wearing a suit on Monday? Yeah, I normally wear one every day. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And to the hospital? Yes. We're going to wear, he always looked just great, but it didn't matter where we went. When we walked into a room, and there could be hundreds of people there, it was like immediately he commanded the attention of the room. But what was amazing is he didn't even know it. Because there was just humility there. Pride was not there. He was humble enough to do a lot of things that people wouldn't have understood, but it was because humility. And And I don't know how David achieved that, because I'll be honest with you, sometimes I read about David, and when I'm reading about his life, I don't see him as the most humble guy around. I mean, he's a warrior. A lot of warriors, there's some arrogance there to be able to enter into battle. But something had taken it away. When that pride begins to sneak in, it helps me to remember where I came from. It helps me to remember where I could have been if not for the grace of God, and realizing we need to give all of the glory and all of the praise and all of the honor to God, because without him we are nothing. That verse in James 1:17, every good and every perfect gift comes from the Father above. Every gift. Your gift that you have ability to make a living, that you have knowledge, that you have some type of talent. All of those gifts, not just material things, but everything you are is a gift from God, and without God, we are nothing. We have nothing to offer. We have nothing to present. He's the one that deserves all of the honor and all of the glory and all of the praise. All right? So there's something else here in this psalm, in Psalms 131. If you look in your Bible, my Bible has a title. It says A Humble Heart right below Psalms 31. But then it says, kind of mine's in kind of an italics, A Song of Degrees of David. Do you see that? Is that in your Bible? Between 131 is and before the verse even starts. If it doesn't, I can help you find a new Bible. But anyway, a song of degrees of David. All right, so what does that mean? You'll notice there's a lot of them. You'll notice Psalms 130, you'll notice Psalms 132, you'll notice there's quite a few of them. They're right together. You can just, all these are song of degrees. Sometimes they are called Psalms of Ascent. And I have spoke quite some time ago, maybe 10 years ago, on one of these Psalms. It was a Psalm of Ascent, and I told you part of the story, but I just want to remind you of this because it's so important when you study the Psalms of Ascent. If you have opportunity to go to Jerusalem when bombs are not dropping, if you have an opportunity to go to Jerusalem and you're visiting there and you're on the south side of the temple, and you're walking around on the steps that lead up to what would have been the Temple Mount. I know there's a dome there and a wall that's kind of in the way right now, but you walk up to that Temple Mount, there are these stairs. And some of them are so worn that you can see down to pieces of stone that would have been there when Jesus walked there. And you say, oh, that's amazing. But then you find out something unusual about all these stairs. Sometimes you find it here without even realizing it. We have people that are sometimes a little bit nervous about walking down these stairs because the carpet on each stair is the same as the carpet below it. And you're like, I don't know where that step is going. But you can feel it. At my house, I can pretty much walk up and down the stairs when it's almost completely dark, because you just get used to it. You know the steps, you know the cadence, right? And you understand that. So you go somewhere and you're visiting somewhere and you're in a building or something, and the steps are not as even as they should have been, and you're like, what happened? Because most stairs, there's a regulation. You may even say something like, well, that's not OSHA approved, right? So you're walking there on the south side of the steps of Jerusalem, and one of the things that the guide might point out to you, if you have one, is these steps are not even at all. They are designed that way. You cannot run up these stairs. If you try to run up these stairs, you are going to bust your face, right? Because they're uneven. One step may be wide, the next step's a little shorter, then one's this length, and then the height. Everything's different. Each step is different because you have to pay attention. And so if you were going to the temple and you had the Psalms of Ascent, you're going up to the temple. As you're going up to the temple, all of these song of degrees, and there are different degrees of those steps, that's what you're supposed to read while you're going up to the temple. And you know why it's difficult to make it up those steps? Because you're not supposed to rush to worship. You're supposed to take your time. You're supposed to take your time. You're going to meet with God in his presence. It's something that we should not take lightly. Boy, it's Wednesday night. I know it's a tough night for this psalm to come because we were rushing all day long just to get here. We had to work, and you had to, maybe you ate, maybe you didn't have time to eat before Wednesday night church. I don't know. But it's rush. We come in, we sit down, tired. Wow, air conditioning's nice. It was 100 degrees outside today. And I relax, and it's not always easy to engage in worship. You know what has to happen if we're really going to engage with the fact that the presence of God is here, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, he'll be there in the midst. We need to get out of the way. We need to fully recognize that God is here, and God is ready to meet with us. And if our pride and self gets in the way, we will come and we'll go and we'll fail to meet with our wonderful Lord. What a shame. So to really see him, sometimes we have to be brought low. When we arrive at worship, all we really want is to see him. He is our hope. And for that to be effective, our pride needs to be eliminated. And we need to get a good, proper perspective of who God is and how we compare as nothing. And be so thankful that we can enter into the presence of God tonight, come boldly into his throne room. What a privilege that we don't deserve, because of his mercy and because of his grace, not because of who we are. All right, I want you to take out your prayer sheet. If you received it as you walked in the door, if someone gave it to you,